I'm going to give you the definitive solution to solving your thin or topped contact forever. And it begins with understanding what type of thin contact that you're making. There are two varieties of thin. Let's unpack the varieties of thin, how to identify which bucket you fall into, well then we'll explore the appropriate drill that you'll need to solve your thin contact forever. So, hula hoop. If we can think of this is the swing arc, the club moving from ground up above my head, back to the ground and into the follow through. And we drop it down on the ground and we miniaturize myself inside of my hula hoop here. The first variety of thin we'll talk about is what's called lifted arc thin, where the bottom of the arc as it's coming back to strike the ball is just simply too high relative to the ground. The arc never interacts with the ground such that you likely catch the middle of the ball, or even worse, higher than the equator of the ball, and top it, right? So that's the thin, or that's the top shot that scuttles along the ground. The second variety of thin, just as common, is the variety of thin where this arc shape does get to the ground, it just gets to the ground a little bit too late. So something in the swing has caused this arc to move too far to our lead side, causing the club to land really late. So I think what you're probably understanding now is that, well, if one type of thin contact gets to the ground and the other doesn't, then the evidence of what type of thin contact I make should be revealed in the existence of a divot, and you're absolutely right. If you make thin contact in your lifted arc variety, there'll be no divot. If you make thin contact and you look down after watching your ball scuttle off into the long grass in front, and you can see a divot some number of inches after where you think that golf ball was sitting, then you're more of the shifted arc or the late bottom variety of thin contact. So there's the two varieties of thin contact. That's how to identify which one you are, but which one you are then would determine a pathway to go down to create a solution to that. So let's deal first with a little bit more of the common variety of thin contact, the lifted arc, where that bottom actually just never gets to the ground. Now, there are a couple, three, let's say, causal factors, reasons why a person would lift the arc, but there's really just one solution that you need that's going to solve all of those things together. So one solution to solve that lifted arc. And it's really the secret of the pros. What happens is, if we think of our swing as an arc, right? We've already talked about the club head moving around, orbiting around my body. That's the arc of the hula hoop. But there's also a secondary arc, and that's the arc that the hands take, or the middle of the grip takes, around our body. Now the secret of the pros is this: if this arc has a height relative to the ground coming back, professional golfers that never hit it thin, this arc as it's returning back to strike the ball is always lower by some amount as it's passing their trail thigh, their back thigh. And that amount is anywhere between 1 to 3 centimeters lower pre-impact. Now, how they do that is a combination of factors that will all play out by doing the drill that I'm about to prescribe for you. But net, what they do is they have their body lower to the ground and they have their arms extending by some amount. If you see amateur players slow down coming into impact, most of them have their arms flexed up and in, and therefore this handle arc is up further away from the ground, and it's gonna lead to that arc shape never getting to the ground. So here's the drill then. I'm gonna take our normal stance. We're gonna reverse our grip, going to a cross-handed grip, where your glove hand's on the bottom side of the grip, or bottom end of the grip. We're gonna make backswing and downswing, feeling like we're pushing our top hand, which is our trail hand, back towards the ground. We're gonna try and get the butt of the grip as low to the ground as possible. And in getting it low to the ground, we do two things. We extend our arms, you can see how close they are together, and we feel like our body is lower to the ground. Then what we do is we rehearse the same thing, but with our grip on there, normal style. And then we turn that into a small swing rep, where we feel that push down coming into impact, and the evidence of success is I've landed that club absolutely perfectly. Come on in, take a look at this. Landed that club absolutely perfectly. The divot started on the very back edge of where that golf ball was sitting. That next step, clearly, you're probably already anticipating this, is rehearse the same thing. We're trying to lower that arc by getting our arms extended versus retracted or bent. And then we turn that into a full swing. And there's the full swing version, using that exact same sensation of pushing the handle of the grip, particularly the butt end of the grip, not the bottom of the grip. If I push the bottom end of the grip, there's a good chance I'll just extend the club head out, getting the club head arc close to the ground, when the whole point here is to get the handle arc close to the ground. And I've landed it super precisely. So that's how to identify whether you are this variety, whether you fall into this bucket of thin contact error. But what if you're the opposite? What if you're just, nah, Cam, I just land the club too late. Let me show you what that looks like first. And just in seeing what it looks like, you might start to understand what that solution might also be. Two ways we'll land that divot uber late. We'll get to the ground, but it's uber late. The first way is this. There it goes. Top shot. Club got to the ground. It got to the ground some 2 inches after it should have. And I think you saw what I did exactly. I shifted my body mass way too far to the left. I got ahead of the golf shot. Raise your hand out there if you're a victim to getting ahead of it. Absolutely, we almost always are. The other way that we can land that divot late, and we're going to shift to a down target line camera now, so pan around here with me, is we simply just swing steep to impact. We use our upper body to rotate towards the target a little early. We don't get the hand path down in time, and so therefore that entire swing arc is shifted further to the left. We're going to attack it steeper, and we're likely going to land it late, just like this. Thin contact, ball took off about 10 feet relative to the ground, and my divot is now traveling to the left of my straight line target line, and I've landed that divot some 2.5 inches after ball contact. So how do we know which one of those we are? It's the direction component. If I'm making a divot and it's traveling really far left of my target line, assuming your stance line is on your target line, then you're the variety that shifts their upper body really early out of transition, creating this heavy left steep swing direction. So we have two solutions, one of which would be applicable if you're the early upper body over the top swinger, one of which would be applicable if you're just, I shift too much to my left side. Let me demonstrate both of them. Okay, so let's deal with, I just shift too much to my left, I'm swinging on a relatively neutral plane, and therefore I land the divot too late. How do we stop the excess of upper body movement to the left? We do it by feeling like we can make swings, keeping a reasonable amount of body weight moving into our left side. So what I want you to do is I want you to take a stance, and I want you to make swings late in the backswing, late in the downswing, feeling like you can lift that left foot ever so slightly. So as you can see, I'm just kind of bouncing that left foot up and down, and it causes me to still be able to shift my body mass to the left, but to not do it so aggressively and so early. Right? And then we take that sensation of staying a little bit more centered out with our body mass in the swing to a shot. And then it brought that low point of the swing back to an appropriate location relative to the back edge of the ball. Now, if that's not quite enough, if we need a little bit more heavy emphasis on this, then what I can have is I can have a finish line sitting up in front of my head that serves as a reference point, that I never want to get my nose to the left of the alignment rod that I have sitting in the ground now. So I make backswings, I make downswings, feeling like I'm killing the excess of body mass shift to the left, essentially staying behind the ball, just like so. Very shallow approach to the ball, a soft divot that started just post impact, not that 2 to 3 inches after. Now, what if we're the other variety? What if we're steep out of transition? We can use this one again, but this time we'd like to pop a head cover on it. So now we've got a head cover down the bottom, it's below hand height, because what we want to do is we want to be able to feel this club head path based on the handle path, swing in closer to our right hip on the downswing, and this obstruction right here gives us some incentive to do exactly that. Now I've set this up far too often, Out of the gates, people try and swing and avoid this, and invariably they crash into it. So I would call this your practice station, not your live fire rep station. So we'll kick the golf ball out of the way as we're getting accustomed to this. In conjunction with this, we use a second sensation. It's a really simple thing. It's called figure 8 hand paths, where we really feel like in transition, we're dropping the hand path, we're taking the grip of the club, and we're putting it down really close or in our right hip pocket. So we're going to plant the handle into our right hip pocket, and done correctly, or possibly even done in excess, we'll be so far away from this head cover that we may even start to hit really big draws that launch out to the right. We may even start to catch ground earlier than we actually want, and that's okay, because sometimes in learning we have to overemphasize to find the optimum. We have to tip the scale all the way to the other end of the spectrum. So it's figure 8 hand paths with the obstruction sitting in the way. Now I've got the obstruction really far out of the way, so it serves as a reminder, but it's not so much of an obstruction that we're going to catch it and then potentially do damage to either the club or our hands as we brush on through. We rehearse a figure 8 hand path, and then we give it a shot. There's the figure 8 hand path. Now that time I was so shallow, I didn't make any divot at all. In fact, as I investigate, there was only a slight brush of the turf. So we've got a way to now identify what type of thin contact you're making, the reason you're making that thin contact, and a couple of different drills to remedy your specific type of thin contact. I would start slow. I would start with developing the feels in movement that allow you to integrate the change before you add your normal full swing power to it. And this is bound to show up as more solid strikes when you're hitting any iron, 3-wood, hybrid, any club that you might hit the ground. It's going to cause you to hit it far more solid. Best of luck. Oh, and by the way, don't forget to hit subscribe and that like button.